Trump dropped a bombshell at the UN. The world needs to hear this. In September 2025, the world voted. Over 140 nations rose inside the halls of the United Nations. Would their vote be in Israel or Palestine's benefit? Most countries have come out to recognize Palestine as a state, and Trump gave a warning: you will be shocked when you find 5 discoveries about Israel and this event. Discovery 1. On September 12, 2025, the United Nations voted on what they called the New York Declaration. The result? 142 nations in favor, just 10 against, and only 12 abstained. That resolution called for a ceasefire in Gaza, endorsed a 2-state solution, and opened the door for full Palestinian statehood. France and Saudi Arabia presented it. Israel and the United States opposed it, and the world applauded. During his address to the 81st United Nations General Assembly on September 23, 2025, President Donald Trump strongly criticized the recent wave of international support for Palestinian statehood, particularly the formal recognitions by countries like France, the UK, Canada, Australia, Portugal, Belgium, and others. 1 week later, on September 19th, another vote took place. The question was whether Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas should be allowed to address the assembly virtually, after the U.S. denied his delegation visas. Again, the world sided with Palestine. 145 in favor, just 5 against. The United States, Israel, and a few small allies. If most of the world now stands with Palestine, why do Israel and the United States stand almost alone? And what does prophecy say about such isolation? Discovery 2. Trump's solution. First, the nations voted in favor of Palestine. Now Trump warns them, peace without justice is no peace at all. He asserted that the United States has never been an obstacle to reaching an agreement with Israel, positioning America as a steadfast ally committed to facilitating a resolution on Israel's terms. But here's where the prophetic alarm begins to ring. Trump framed his words in the same way he once framed the Abraham Accords. Peace through deals, peace through negotiation, peace through recognition. He was calling for an end to war by striking agreements. To the world, this sounded reasonable. To prophecy watchers, it sounded familiar. We saw what happened. But to understand why it matters, we must go back to 2020, when Trump and Netanyahu made a deal that shocked the world. This was the start of something big, and maybe even more. September 15th, 2020. The Abraham Accords were signed. This was not just a peace treaty. It shook the world stage. Trump called it the dawn of a new Middle East, a historic move after years of Arab-Israeli tension. Named after Abraham, the father of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, these accords reached for something new: unity of faiths in the most divided place on earth. But not everyone was happy. Palestinians felt sold out, saying the accords pushed their statehood away. Iran raged against the peace. Enemies of Israel trembled as Arab nations chose wealth over war. Then came 2025. Trump, back in the White House, pushed to grow the accords even more. Trump and Netanyahu are doubling down, building a deal that unites nations around Israel. Sounds like peace, right? But here's what makes some Christians uneasy. The Bible speaks about a covenant like this, one that looks good, but hides danger. Ever heard of the treacherous treaty? Now, let us open the Bible and look at the prophecy that has everyone talking. The key passage is Daniel 9:27. And he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. But in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. This verse shows a 7-year treaty between a strong leader and many nations centered on Israel. But here is the scary part. Halfway through, it is broken by what is called the abomination of desolation. This is what Bible teachers call the treacherous treaty, the deal that begins the 7-year tribulation. Now, this does not mean that this is the exact covenant Daniel spoke about, but Daniel is not the only prophet who warned us. 2 Thessalonians 2:3 says, "Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God." Now here is where it gets both interesting and troubling. Some Christians are looking at the Abraham Accords and seeing strange parallels. Israel-focused? Yes. Involving many nations? Yes. Promising peace in the most dangerous region on earth? Yes. And Trump in 2025 is adding more. Syria, Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, building the coalition bigger. Let's be honest. You hear this prophecy, a deal, a betrayal, an antichrist, and maybe you feel a chill. Could this be happening now? Or maybe you doubt it and think it is hype. Either way, I want you to ask, what if the Bible is warning us about moments like this? Could Trump and Netanyahu's push be setting the stage? The likeness is too close to brush aside. Now, let's look at what scholars call the covenant checklist, the signs Daniel's prophecy gives us. Criterion number 1, he shall confirm a covenant. The Hebrew word gabar means to make strong or to strengthen. This is not a brand new thing. It is making something stronger. The Abraham Accords, signed in 2020, are now being strengthened in 2025. Criterion number 2, with many. The first accords included Israel, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan. That is several nations. Trump's 2025 plan adds Syria, Saudi Arabia, and Lebanon. That is many, for sure. Criterion number 3, for 1 week. In prophecy, 1 week means 7 years. The Abraham Accords do not list 7 years, but Trump's time frame for expansion is 7 years, until 2028. Criterion number 4, Israel-centered. Daniel's covenant is about Israel and is broken by the desecration of the temple. The Abraham Accords are all about normalizing with Israel. There's one word in Bible prophecy that could change everything, and most people have missed it. That word is confirm. He shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. Daniel 9. Now here's where it gets interesting. The prophecy doesn't say create. It doesn't say write. It doesn't say negotiate. It says confirm. Do you see the massive implications of this? The question is not if a covenant will come. The question is if we will see it when someone steps up to confirm what is already in place. And that person may be closer than we think. Are you watching? Are you ready? Because if this is what Daniel saw, the clock is not only ticking, it's almost out of time. Here's something that should make every believer's blood run cold. The Bible does not warn us about war in the end times. It warns us about peace, false peace, tricky peace, peace that makes the world drop its guard, right before judgment falls. Trump and Netanyahu are not only talking about ending fights, they are talking about turning the whole Middle East into a paradise. But what if that paradise is exactly what the Bible warns us about? Let me show you what the Scripture says about end times peace. 1 Thessalonians 5:3. For when they shall say, peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. Daniel 8:25. And through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the Prince of Princes, but he shall be broken without hand. Look at that phrase, by peace shall destroy many. The Antichrist does not take over through war. He takes over through peace. He fixes problems. He brings wealth. He makes life better for everyone. Until he doesn't. At their July 7th meeting, Netanyahu told Trump, "Your vision is brilliant. You're not just making peace, you're making the desert bloom." Trump answered, "We're going to make this region so prosperous, so safe, that people will call it a miracle." A miracle. That is the same word the Bible uses to talk about the Antichrist's trick. Revelation 13:13-14. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast. But here's what's truly scary. This peace is working. The Abraham Accords have already changed relationships that seemed impossible to fix. Old enemies are becoming friends, trade is growing, tourism is rising, technology is being shared. 6 things that will happen when the Antichrist makes his covenant deal. Number 1, the 7-year countdown begins. The first thing that happens when the Antichrist signs his covenant isn't visible to human observers. It doesn't make headlines. It doesn't trigger market reactions or diplomatic responses. But it's the most significant event that occurs, because it starts a countdown that heaven and hell have been anticipating for thousands of years. From the moment that covenant is signed, God's prophetic clock begins the final countdown to the second coming of Christ. But here's what makes this countdown so precise and so terrifying. Every major event of the next 7 years has already been scheduled. The timing of the temple's desecration, the timing of the great persecution, the timing of God's wrath being poured out on the earth, the timing of Christ's return, all of it has been predetermined to occur at exact intervals within this 7-year period. Think about what that means. While world leaders congratulate themselves on achieving peace, while media celebrates diplomatic breakthrough, while stock markets surge on news of Middle East stability, the most precisely timed sequence of prophetic events in human history has just begun. And here's what should chill every person who understands these prophecies. This countdown cannot be stopped. It cannot be postponed. It cannot be negotiated or modified. The moment the Antichrist confirms that covenant, the gears of biblical prophecy begin turning with mechanical precision. Human leaders think they're making decisions, but they're actually fulfilling a script that was written before the foundation of the world. This leads us to something even more significant that happens the moment that covenant is signed. Thing number 2, Israel's false security becomes their greatest vulnerability. The second thing that happens when the Antichrist makes his covenant deal is psychological, not political. Israel doesn't just gain a peace agreement, they gain something they haven't had in their modern history: complete security. and that security will become their deadliest trap. For the first 3.5 years after this covenant is signed, their borders will be secure. They'll finally be able to focus on building rather than defending. Every protection will be provided. Israel will have every reason to trust completely in their covenant partner. But biblical prophecy reveals that this trust will be weaponized against them. The same leader who protects them from their enemies will become their greatest enemy. The same agreement that provides security will become the instrument of their persecution. The same covenant that seems to guarantee their survival will nearly destroy them. Matthew 24:21 describes what happens next. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, never shall be. The greatest tribulation in human history begins when Israel's false security is shattered by the ultimate betrayal. But this betrayal requires something specific to trigger it, which brings us to the third thing that happens. Thing number 3. The temple rebuilding project accelerates. The third thing that happens when the Antichrist confirms his covenant is architectural, and it will fulfill Jewish dreams that have persisted for nearly 2,000 years. The temple will finally be rebuilt. But here's what most people don't understand. The temple isn't just a religious building. It's the stage for the greatest deception in human history. The covenant will not only allow for temple reconstruction, it will actively promote and protect it. Think about what this means strategically. For the first time since 70 AD, Jews will have international legal protection for rebuilding their temple on the Temple Mount. The most disputed piece of real estate in the world will suddenly become the most protected construction site on Earth. But the temple rebuilding isn't just about fulfilling Jewish religious aspirations. It's about creating the physical location where the Antichrist will commit the ultimate blasphemy that Jesus himself warned about. Listen to what Christ said in Matthew 24:15. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Whoso readeth, let him understand. The holy place. That's the temple. The Antichrist needs the temple to be rebuilt because that's where he plans to declare himself God. You can't desecrate a temple that doesn't exist. You can't demand worship in a holy place that hasn't been constructed. So the covenant will specifically include provisions for temple reconstruction. International funding will be provided. Security guarantees will be established. Archaeological disputes will be resolved. Religious objections will be overcome. Every obstacle that has prevented temple rebuilding for nearly 2 millennia will suddenly disappear through diplomatic agreement. And here's what makes this temple rebuilding particularly significant. It won't just restore Jewish worship. It will fulfill Christian expectations about biblical prophecy. Many Christians who have been waiting their entire lives to see the temple rebuilt will interpret this as confirmation that God is blessing the peace process. The very people who should be most suspicious of the Antichrist's agenda will instead see temple construction as evidence of divine approval. They'll support the covenant because it enables something they believe God wants. Their theological understanding will be used to support the very system that will ultimately persecute them. The temple that's rebuilt through the covenant will become the throne room of the Antichrist's false divinity. And that brings us to the fourth thing that happens. Thing number 4. Supernatural signs and wonders authenticate the deception. The fourth thing that happens when the Antichrist makes his covenant deal is supernatural, and it will convince even skeptical people that something genuinely divine is taking place. The covenant won't just be a political agreement backed by human authority. It will be accompanied by signs and wonders that appear to confirm heaven's approval. This is where the deception becomes so sophisticated that even biblically informed Christians might be deceived. The Antichrist won't just claim divine authority. He'll demonstrate what appears to be divine power. Listen to what 2 Thessalonians 2:9 tells us. Even him, whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders. Notice that these are called lying wonders, not fake wonders. They're genuine supernatural events, but they're empowered by Satan rather than God. The miracles are real, but their source is deceptive. Think about what this means for the covenant signing. When that agreement is reached, miraculous events will begin occurring that seem to validate the peace process. Healings might take place at diplomatic meetings. Weather patterns might change in ways that benefit all parties. Economic prosperity might surge beyond natural explanation. People won't just see political success. They'll witness what appears to be divine intervention blessing the peace process. This supernatural authentication leads directly to the fifth thing that happens. Thing number 5. Global worship systems begin to merge. The fifth thing that happens when the Antichrist confirms his covenant is religious, and it represents the most fundamental spiritual shift in human history. Revelation 13:8 describes the scope of this unified worship. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. All that dwell upon the earth, not most people, not many people, but all people. Religious unity comes with a price that most people won't recognize until it's too late. The elimination of exclusive truth claims. This brings us to the most terrifying thing that happens when the covenant is signed. Thing number 6. The point of no return is reached.